Our second reading comes from the Gospel of John. I myself am the living bread come down from heaven. If any eat this bread, they will live forever. The bread I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. The temple authorities then began to argue with one another. How can he give us his flesh to eat? Jesus replied, the truth of the matter is, if you don't eat the flesh and drink the blood of the chosen one, you won't have life in you. Those who do eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. Everyone who eats my flesh and drinks my blood lives in me, and I live in them. Just as the living Abba God sent me, and I have life because of Abba God, so those who feed on me will have life because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. It's not the kind of bread your ancestors ate, for they died. Whoever eats this kind of bread will live forever. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Amen. Let us pray. Holy God, we invite you into this space that your spirit of wisdom might descend upon all of us as we share together what we know and how we might know it, as we wrestle with the texts in front of us and look for those nuggets of wisdom that we can take with us. We ask that you will be in this space, opening our eyes and ears, our hearts and our minds. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God. Amen.
Amen.
So as y'all are thinking about this impending question ahead, about what kind of wisdom you might have to offer, I was engaging this text, right, where God meets Solomon in his dream as he's about to take over for David, who's just died. And God, in this dream, asked Solomon, what is it that you desire? I will give you what you wish. So my curious mind went to my friend Google to ask, what is it that people would do if you had one wish? You're not allowed to wish for more wishes. We've been doing this since we were children, probably. What would your one wish be? And there's a variety of answers that showed up on Google, between some of the personal, I want to have a lot of money, or I want to have a big house and cars, or for some folk it was to restore or enter into new kinds of relationship. And then there are a few people who would ask for more global things, like world peace, or eliminating hunger, or to have no more war. And I'm still stuck. I don't know what that one wish would be if God were to come visit me and ask, what is it that you want that I can give to you? And so my curiosity persists, and I'm going to open the question to you all as well as we sermonize together. What is it that you would ask for if God were to visit you in a dream and gave you that one thing that you would ask for?
Trillions of dollars.
Trillions of dollars.
Yes.
Are you going to share?
Oh, yes.
Then what he said.
Some of your faces very much mimic what's going on in me in the, how do you pick just one thing when there are just so many things in the world and in our lives that need to be attended to? $1 trillion, I know in my life, would solve a lot of that stuff, right? Put in a plan for some of the social stuff and individual stuff, and then still have more. We don't have to worry about what kind of bills need to get skipped for other bills and whatnot, right? But what would you do with that one wish? Yeah.
I would want my daughter to be healed,
Mm.
to be in perfectly sound mind.
Yeah. That's a big one. A want for healing and wholeness for those around us, perhaps even for ourselves with your toe. Mm. And what would that even look like, right? Everything around us would have to change.
Solomon was asking the right thing there, for being able to see and understand what better, but that's hard. That's hard to ask. Ask for. It's easier to ask for things.
Right.
I don't think I can be as good as him at picking that as the one thing.
Yeah. See, if you did have the wisdom, then you'd be stuck with the responsibility with actually using it in the way that it was gifted.
Yeah.
So I don't really want that either. Glad it was Solomon and not me. Yeah, it's a tough question, and one perhaps that we can wrestle with essentially what it is that God gives us per our requests. Sometimes not within our requests. And what do we do with it? What do you do once healing has been achieved? What do you do once your bank account is very much in the black? What do you do with this wisdom? That's one of the things I appreciate, even about reading for myself about Solomon. Growing up, it was always like, yeah, he was the wisest ruler ever. But we never really looked at the readings around his coming to power, where he had a whole bunch of wives and concubines, which was not really the proper practice for the time. He wasn't supposed to have the hundreds of women that he was with, but he did. And even as we're learning about him coming into power, he was still participating in some of the practices of the cultural influences in the space where he was living, and not necessarily in the ways in which the Israelites were invited to participate in engaging with God. And yet, even with these imperfect things about Solomon, we hold him up as being the wisest ruler for being able to ask for such a gift, such a wish for God to grant him. And I really appreciate that, because it allows us to both humanize Solomon, but also in doing that, it allows us to see ourselves in this text, to see ourselves even in relation to God and how it is that God shows up in our world. It is not perfection that God seeks. It's not 100% rule following that God seeks, but to be able to be honest about who we are and how we are, so that we can engage fully with the world as God would call us. And that's kind of some of the wisdom I'm gleaning from this text in this time, in a time of a lot of things going on. Definitely wisdom seems to be in short supply nowadays. And so I invite you all to share some of the wisdoms you have gained in the time you've been on this earth. What are some of those nuggets of wisdom and truth that you have come across that might be good for all of us?
An eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. Gandhi.
Yeah. You started us off so good. Thankfully, we're not competing, so.
I think I got this from one of the daily devotions that you get in an email, but it's better to be kind than right.
Ooh.
And that is something that I do with my sister when she starts arguing with me. It's better just to shut up and be nice, not argue. And
Yeah, it's a layered wisdom. It might not be as obvious, right, as the eye for an eye, like blinding everyone. But the wisdom even of that, it preserves us, right? There's some self-preservation that happens with, not having to be right in this cultural way that would have us strive for rightness, but how kindness brings us into a different kind of a space.
It emphasizes the relationship more than the intellectual
Yeah,
debate that's going on. Huh?
yeah.
I read this in all the going back to school kinds of things that are out now. And it said to parents, let your child be the athletic one, let them be the musical one, let them be the math genius. And it had a very long list. And the last one was, but don't let them be the mean kid.
Mm.
I think that speaks to us too.
Mhm.
Yeah, that doesn't stop on the playground, unfortunately. Yeah. Mm.
Well, since at my, probably my better moments, I think that I need to be a leader, and that I think we all need to be leaders. And in thinking, which is that responsibility that I shy away, I then immediately shy away from, well,
Yeah.
let somebody else do that. But one bit of wisdom maybe is, in struggling with that, is looking at others, particularly at high places, who are purporting to be leaders, and seeing what a lack of wisdom
Yeah.
looks like, and yet, you know, in a leadership role. It's hard to say what it is, but I know it when it isn't there.
Yeah, yeah. I think even like on the flip side, having the wisdom of discerning the wisdom of your leaders, right? And how it is that you fall in line or not with whatever it is that they're leading. Yeah. Wisdom, what is it? And why is it that we celebrate Solomon for the wisdom that he displays? And that to me kind of leads to this nugget of wisdom that someone shared with me not too long ago, and reading this text, it kind of like flooded right back into my mind, right? The idea that, you know, with all this fear all around us, the ways that people are acting out of fear, in ways that they may not usually act, and the things that we're enacting because of fear. She had shared with me, you know, like, everyone talks about being fearless, right? That fearless leader, and how fearless is, we elevate fearlessness. But she shared with me, you know, maybe it's not about being fearless, but to be fear-facing. And how being fear-facing changes how it is that we engage even with fear. It doesn't erase the fact that fear is there and it will be there, right? To say fearless kind of diminishes and erases the reality that fear is real. But if we're fear-facing, what does that mean for us? And that's definitely what I see here in the Solomon text, you know, as I looked at all the stuff around this wise leader that we continue to celebrate to this day, all these thousands of years later. He doesn't take away the fact that he doesn't feel like he knows what he's doing. And he asks God, look, I don't know what I'm doing, but if you could just give me some wisdom, that'd be great. You know, so we recognize, right, the wisdom of asking for wisdom, but also I think he takes on this posture of fear-facing rather than fearlessness, right? And so I want to share that nugget of wisdom with all of you and myself as I'm saying that out loud, what it might be to be a people who are fear-facing. A people who recognize the very real fear in our lives and still choose to look at fear in the face and know that it's not going to consume us, it's not going to erode or poison us as we face that very fear. So whether that's being kind when someone's trying to drive you into a right-wrong argument, or not taking out someone's eye because they took yours out, like, what does it mean to be fear-facing? The audacity to be all the things about who you are and not perpetuating the meanness that tends to be our social currency. The kind of fear-facing of enacting policies that may not be popular, but knowing that they're right. Or to be fear-facing those in leadership who are doing atrocious things and calling them out and inviting them into something else. The wisdom of being fear-facing. I think that's something that we can definitely take from this text. Our wisest leader in our journey as Christians and people of this text in particular, we can learn how to be honest about the very real fears and imperfections that we possess. And even with those things, to be able to approach God honestly and say, look, this is what I got. You already know this though, right? So how is it that you're calling me to be where I am and put me into a place where I need to be in a way that ultimately serves you, your creation, your people? And that, I think, is a word that we can definitely share together. To be a people who are fear-facing. Not to shy away from fear. Not to pretend it doesn't exist for the sake of, that Midwest nice that we do really well. What does it mean to be fear-facing? It is a heavy responsibility to have that kind of wisdom that has us going against our nature, to go against the grain of culture and society, and to do that which is right. Not the right thing, but doing the thing that is right. That is my wish for all of us as we continue to wrestle with the text, as we wrestle with the text that is our culture, the text that is our very lives. Let us be a people who are fear-facing. And let's do so with the audacity to know that God already has us, this moment and the future moments. And whatever may be ahead of us, we don't know what that is, knowing that we can do it, because we're not on our own. We're here together here, and we are gathering with those cloud of witnesses who've gone before us. And as we do so, we're truly making a way for those who are yet to come ahead. Amen.